emergency operating area to provide assistance to other affected territorial authorities during the 2023 North Island severe weather event response. As you recall, we had several severe weather events impacting the North Island during the early part of 2023. Tropical Cyclone Hale, the Auckland Anniversary severe weather, and Tropical Cyclone Gabrielle being the key weather events. On the 10th of January 2023, Tropical Cyclone Hale impacted the North Island from the Coromandel Peninsula and the east coast of the North Island to the Wairarapa and Tararua Ranges. Cyclone Hale caused wide-reaching impacts with flooding, slips to the North Island, with the most significant impact felt in the Tairāwhiti region. In the Thames Coromandel district, there was foreshore erosion from storm surge in Whitianga. On the 27th of January 2023, a low-pressure system carrying a long band of rain and thunderstorms impacted the North Island, resulting in an unprecedented rainfall that caused widespread flooding in Northland, Bay of Plenty and Tairāwhiti region, and significant impacts in the Auckland region. The impacts from this event included flooding, landslides, building damage, unfortunately loss of life. At this time, several of the Western Waikato emergency operating staff were involved in the state of local emergency declared at Waitomo District, including myself. The Waitomo District Council recognised and acknowledged the contributions from all territorial authority staff involved in that emergency event. Following closely on the back of the Auckland Anniversary severe weather event was Cyclone Gabrielle, which devastated North Island, New Zealand in early February 2023. The Civil Defence Emergency Management Group activated the Group Emergency Coordinating Centre, and local authorities activated their emergency operating centres in preparation for the impacts of Cyclone Gabrielle. States of local emergency were declared in the Waikato District, Hauraki Districts, Thames Coromandel District Council were already in a state of local emergency being declared as part of the severe weather event. The Waikato Civil Defence Emergency Management Group then declared after the declarations at the district level, so at a coordinating centre. The impacts of Cyclone Gabrielle experienced were significant, as you know, which included extensive flooding, coastal storm surge, loss of damage to lifelines, roading, electricity, telecommunications, internet connectivity, building damage, and involved, again, further unfortunate loss of life. Particularly in the Thames Coromandel District, there was continued flooding and slips and prolonged road closures, which impacted and affected businesses. A national state of emergency was declared, as you're aware, on the 14th of February 2023. And as part of our group's Civil Defence Emergency Management Deployment Policy, requests were made for staffing assistance in the emergency operating centres. From Waipa District, Dave Symes, Kathy Shaw and Janice Down responded to the call. Dave worked at the Thames EOC and Napier and Hastings EOC, Emergency Operating Centres. Kathy at the Group Office and Waikato District Council's Emergency Operating Centre and Napier Emergency Operating Centre. And Janice, the Waikato Group Emergency Coordinating Centre. In addition, Kathy Shaw also responded to the Nelson Tasman Emergency Management Severe Weather Event in 2022. And as a result, it was with great pleasure that I invite our Civil Defence Emergency Management Deputy Chair, Joint Committee Representative Councillor Lou Brown, to present certificates of appreciation to Dave, Kathy and Janice, whose participation in the emergency operating and coordinating centres have made a positive difference to both the response and the communities affected. On behalf of the Waikato Civil Defence Emergency Management Group and myself as Coordinating Executive Member for Emergency Management, we express our severe gratitude for their knowledge, experience and support they provide during the response event. I now invite any comments from the Council and then ask Councillor Lou Brown to present the certificates of appreciation on behalf of the Council. Thank you.
A bit dwarfed. Open for question comments. I was advised that this was going to take place and I knew nothing about it, so I'm absolutely, my jaw's dropping actually. I do know that we've done an awful lot to assist, but to understand that it's actually specifically tailored to individuals is really impressive. You know, it's kind of what community's about, right? And it just shows that we have heart and are willing to share it with others. So thank you so much for what you've done. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
So perhaps I just take over for a minute and rise to my feet. I just wanted to make one comment that South Waikato has probably one of the best civil defence emergency teams that we have within our joint committee area. So we are very, very, very lucky to have people of the calibre that we've got standing over there, and also Wayne, who does a tremendous amount of work. So in saying this, I'd like to call forward David Symes, and on behalf of Anna Park and Julian Snowball, offer you that and appreciation for what you've done.
There's a photo
Could
there.
you get to the- Now, Kathy Shaw, on behalf of the committee, stay up here, Dave. Stay up here.
Sit yourself down.
Kathy, an immense amount of work. I know what you do behind the scenes, and it's really appreciated. Thank you very much. I never do anything to a council. Dennis, thank you very much. It's really appreciated. And it is with these sort of people that are in place that we can actually go and take a positive action on people that are. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, did you, who arranged the siren? Fabulous stuff, great. May your services never be needed again, but I suspect that will not be the case. Oh dear. Good stuff. Okay, I take it that this is open, isn't it? And Zoe, we've been streaming all that time. Good, just checking because I didn't get the old wink from you. So cool, excellent. So moving on then to our LTP budget and consultation document topics. Yolanda, Anthea and Melissa.
Me in place of Yolanda.
And, Ken. So Ken in place of Yolanda. You'll all have your memos and documents on Diligent. And you'll recall there was an extra background information document sent, what was it, on Friday? Yesterday. The floor is yours. Sorry. Morena, Council. So the purpose of today's workshop is to present the long-term plan budget or draft budget, our current position for the full 10 years, to obviously seek feedback on that budget position. And then also included in the presentation, we'll be covering off some potential consultation topics and options for those. Again, seeking your feedback. So Ken and I will tag team a little bit on this presentation, and then where support's required, we do have other staff dotted around. So hand it over to you, Ken.
Cool, thank you. Okay, so look, excuse me, a really big part of the story, particularly for the first 3 or 4 years of the LTP, is the graph that you see on your screen there. Which is basically showing interest rate profile and showing the inflation profile in terms of LGCI inflation, which is the measure of inflation that affects us as a council, and in terms of what we're providing. So look, no doubt about it, and in terms of these things, obviously householders have been badly affected by both these things as well, in terms of the level of CPI increase, in terms of the interest rates on home mortgages, etc. Both of them have reached record levels, over a 20 or 30 year period, record levels, over the last year or two, and some of that still remains. So you can certainly see that in the graph. So look, our finances have been incredibly impacted by interest and inflation, and that will be the story at least for the first couple of years. We actually, in the early stages of working up our budgets, did a bit of work in terms of what the impact of the increased interest rates, inflation, and the flow-on effect into depreciation was, and we arrived at a number of 16%, which we kind of called our uncontrollable figure, in terms of that's just the lay of the land. Not much that we can do about interest rates and inflation in the economy. But perhaps keep that figure in mind as we work through the slides, that we quantified the year one uncontrollable cost at 16%. What are some of the other large impacts that have happened, other than the inflation and the interest rates? So definitely cost of compliance in the Three Waters space has been huge. The wastewater, obviously, with environmental standards, very, very relevant to us as we build a new wastewater treatment plant in Cambridge to service the Cambridge community. A huge jump in the environmental standards and therefore the costs in that space. Stormwater, similar, urban stormwater. So in terms of obviously dealing with climate change, which has got some big implications for stormwater, and a new comprehensive stormwater consent, district-wide stormwater consent. Some of the requirements coming out of that are adding huge costs. In fact, urban stormwater, for year one, the increase in the rate requirement in that space alone, urban stormwater, is 82%. So we've had to essentially hike that urban stormwater rate by 82%. It's a biggie. The other area, and councillors, you heard about this just last week at service delivery, recycling costs. So in that whole recycling space, there's been a phenomenal increase in cost. It's kind of been a perfect storm of factors. So look, we've got really significant issues with contamination. That's quite well known. We've put out publicity of that into the community, trying to educate our community in regard to contamination, because that really increases the costs of that activity. The market has dropped away substantially over the last 2 or 3 years in terms of what the recycling contractor can do with those recycling materials and the prices that they can obtain for those recycling materials. Those lower sales essentially feed into or the lower sale returns essentially feed into higher costs. And of course, then in that activity, the impact of inflation has been incredible, particularly around the labour supply. So with increases in minimum wages, etc. Really significant pressures on labour supply and the costs of that labour supply. So a perfect storm in that space, and our recycling rate for year one has had to increase by 55%. So again, a massive hike in the rate requirement in that space. Okay, so with factors like that, we're not alone here as well. I suppose that's another key message that I do need to convey today. So those factors that I've talked about, the inflation, the interest rates, in some cases, insurance costs, with those things, that whole recycling thing is impacting generally across the sector, the compliance costs in the Three Waters space. These factors are impacting local government as a whole, and we're seeing that right across the sector in large rates increases being indicated. And look, you'll be well aware that a week or two ago, Hamilton City had their session similar to what we're having today, and look, they landed at 25.5% in terms of the year one rates increase. Multiple others are indicating that they'll be definitely in that 14, 16, 17% territory. A lot of our immediate neighbours are kind of talking about those sorts of figures. So we're certainly not alone in this space. Okay, so that's enough of that in terms of the background. Where are we actually at in terms of our rates requirement in percentage terms, and thinking very much our headline numbers? So yeah, so look, yeah, I guess where we're at, and yeah, showing 3 years of numbers there. Yeah, so looking firstly at the year one, well, actually not so much looking at year one, looking at the first couple of years. So you can see that that Three Waters, we've kind of done a split, eh? So we've done a split between what the rates increases or the rates requirement increases are in the Three Waters space, and then what those rate requirements are, or the rate requirement increases are for the rest of council's activities around parks and reserves, roads, regulatory activities, so all the other stuff that we do. So you can see there on the table in front of you that those pressures in that Three Water space are pretty huge. So 17.58% in year one, 13.09% in year two. So those are really big pressures. So bear in mind what I just said about well, there's inflation obviously, but there's also those increased compliance costs, etc. That is big. And then you can see across the rest of council activity also big, but a little bit lesser at the 15.22 and the 9.76, and then in year three, 12.63. Why are you seeing no Three Waters number in year three? That's because we have at this stage built our draft LTP numbers. We built those on waters being a council-run activity for years 1 and 2, and thereafter not being a council activity. Now, yeah, another huge challenge for this LTP, of course, is what's happening with that Three Waters activity. So the situation there of including it for just 2 years is obviously based on legislation as it stands currently. Of course, we've got an incoming government who is pretty much promised to repeal that legislation, but at this stage, no solid indication of where that will land or what the timeframes would be. So at this stage, for very, very, very good reason, we are working with the legislation as it exists at the moment. There's actually case law on this in terms of not being appropriate to rely on indications of repeal of legislation or change of legislation. So that's where we've landed. But look, we are very conscious that over the next few months, when that legislation does change, as has been indicated, and when we see a bit more detail of what might be in its place, that we may need to obviously review that assumption. But at this stage, that's the assumption. But look, returning to the slides, you can see those really strong pressures on Three Waters. You can see the inflationary pressures coming through for the rest of council's activity. So that essentially leads to an overall rates requirement increase needed of 16.12% in year one, 11.05% in year two, and 12.63% in year three. We then, as we have always done, is we've determined what we think the growth will be in terms of rating growth. So we think about what new properties might come on board, what increase of capital value we might get. The rating base essentially growing. That's what that growth factor is. To come back to essentially what our headline number is, which is the net of that increase in total rates requirement, less the amount absorbed by growth, we arrive at a bottom line, which essentially is the impact, the rates increase impact on existing ratepayers. And so you can see there in bold at the bottom, those are our three numbers: 14.8%, 9.1%, and 10.9%. In terms of that headline rates number. Okay, what does it look like in the outer years? We haven't put that on a table, we've put that in a graph. A picture tells 1,000 words. So so look, you can see obviously where you've seen the first 3 years. Even year 4 is quite elevated. That's also above 10%. But from there on in, from year 5 onwards, it does drop away to much more in the 1 to 2% territory. drops away a lot. Why does it drop away? Certainly, the inflationary pressure drops away. We expect the inflationary pressure to drop away. We expect to see a diminishment in interest rates. So we've got those things going on. The other thing is in those first 4 years, we've got quite a number, and we'll talk about it in a few moments, quite a number of capital projects, really large capital projects that add to the rates increase pressure. So some of those are in the infrastructure space. So I mentioned earlier on the Cambridge wastewater treatment plant, an absolutely huge project. That is, that's funded by loan. So we've got interest costs coming in. We've got depreciation costs coming in, etc. for the new Cambridge wastewater treatment plant. We've got a number of quite large community facilities projects that are potentially on the go around that time. So your likes of Te Arawai, Cambridge Town Hall, Cambridge Library, etc. Those have been factored in to those early years, and they are contributing to those early years rate rises from year 5 onwards. Obviously, that's looking a lot more manageable and a lot more, what we normally expect to see here at Waipa. Okay, just a bit of a flavour for the capital projects over the 10 years and that investment. So I guess very much what I've just said before. Those are pretty high levels. So up on that $180 million territory in the first couple of years. Then they drop away from year 3 onwards. Obviously, they drop away to quite a large extent by the fact that we don't have 3 waters in from year 3 onwards. So you can see obviously that big drop in value. No 3 waters after from 26, 27 onwards. But the capital program reduces substantially. So that's the capital program. Probably enough about that. The capital program pretty much ends in debt, because a lot of our capital spend is funded by debt. Again, you can see a big drop down for year 3 because of course the expectation there is that when we end the 3 waters activity, when that activity is no longer in house, that debt will be repaid. So you can see the big drop off there. But then that grows again further over time as we spend capital money. Of course, we are also repaying debt down as we go, but we're spending more on infrastructure than we're paying down on the debt. So you do see an increase coming through in there. Okay, major projects, just and I mentioned these before. So at this stage, this is what is in the draft numbers. So we've got Te Arawai, that's a multi-year project. Some of the initial work on that is to start actually in year 1. A lot of that initial work is intended to be funded by external fundraising contribution. So external money rather than council money. So therefore, even though we start that multi-year project in year 1, we really only start getting the rates impact when we start loan financing on that project. So that's happening in years 3 and 4. There's some increases in that space for Te Arawai. The Cambridge Water Tower. So look, the Cambridge Water Tower has been quite problematic. So we've got some issues with that Cambridge Water Tower. Its proximity to Resthaven and its structural strength. The last estimate we had in terms of the strengthening work that would be required for that Cambridge Water Tower to make sure that it's up to scratch in terms of what might happen in an earthquake. Our last quantified figure there was $6 million. That's a huge whack of money to for something that obviously has huge heritage value, but sadly not a lot of functional value. In fact, that water tower was only used as a water tower for a relatively short period. So look, this is the Cambridge Water Tower is something that will be quite a major consultation item, and we will come to that a little bit later in this presentation. But what we have funded at this stage in the draft LTP is that we actually look to secure a resource consent for a demolition of the tower. Sadly, that gets demolished. We would look to preserve the history, or to acknowledge the history, I guess, by way of using some of those bricks from the tower to make a paved area, probably in the shape of the tower, but lying horizontally rather than vertically, obviously, and some interpretive signage with photos of the water tower in all its glory, etc. So a much smaller amount of money. I believe 600,000 for that. Actually, I think 750. So I think there's some costs with the resource consent in year one, securing the resource consent, which will be quite a major thing. But I think around about 150 for resource consent planning, etc., and then 600,000 for the demolition and for the replacement with what I've just described before. So that's a major project in there, obviously. Cambridge Library. So current Cambridge Library determined as not fit for purpose. You and the community are well aware that there is some work going into a feasibility study for that at this stage. Looking potentially at locations, etc., etc. That work is progressing at the moment. At the moment, there are some dollars in the draft LTP for the Cambridge Library to start that in year 2. The rates impact starting to kick in from year 3, and then Cambridge Town Hall is another major. There has been a trust appointed to lease and run that town hall, but also with a very clear brief to activate the town hall, and that trust looking at a very significant capital investment to bring that beautiful heritage building back to full use, etc. So essentially what they're talking about is that work happening over the course of year 3. So a very significant capital investment from council at the start of year 3, assisted by externally fundraised monies, and then the rates impact in year 4. Okay, so all of those projects, they are big projects. They are all happening in the early years of the LTP. These will be, and when I hand over to Melissa soon, these will be kind of major consulting items in the consultation document. But what I've got up on screen there is what numbers we've included in the LTP at the moment. Well, not actually, you're not seeing the numbers there, but I'm just telling you that the dollars to achieve those things, with those start dates, etc., are sitting in the draft LTP. Okay, right. So look, the high level of rates increase that we are facing here has, of course, led us to question and challenge all kinds of areas of spend as we look to tighten up in line with the economic environment. And so one space that has led us, I guess, to have a really extensive look at is the grants and service funding that we provide to our wider community and to organisations operating in the wider community. So look, I'm not saying that we haven't looked at this in the past, but this is probably the most comprehensive look that we've had in this space, for a number of years. So obviously, these relationships have developed over time. The funding levels have developed over time. They've increased over time. Time to have a really good look at what these funding levels are. So so I've got a couple of slides here that pretty much reflect what we have done with the draft numbers at this stage. So look, Sport Waikato is one of those key organisations we've worked with for many years. we decided that, well, not decided, but in terms of compiling the draft LTP, we've left that funding as it exists at the moment. So they operate under a service contract, 61850, preserved at 61850. Te Waka, who operate regionally in the area of economic development. The proposal here is that we actually remove our contribution there. So the $50,000 that we're paying them in the current year, that will be the end of that arrangement, and that will drop back to nil. Hamilton Waikato Tourism. So whereas this year, we're contributing 183,379 to the very good work that they do in terms of promoting the region. That gets dropped back to 146,262. So still a very significant contribution, alongside a number of our local government neighbours, but at least a contribution than what we've had before. And then, of course, the decision that was made last week at the Service Delivery Committee in terms of eyesight. So we have an eyesight operated by by basically a trust or an incorporated society on both sides of the district. Looking at that, in the current year, 315,000 we pay collectively to the two eyesights. That services contract ends at the end of this year. And the decision was made that we would not. The decision was made last week that we would not enter into a new contract with those two independent bodies. But there'd be provision made for council to do some online visitor promotional activity. So the 315,000 has essentially been replaced by a $65,000 of internal online visitor promotional activity. So so you can see those changes there. In terms of some other areas of council discretionary funding, so these are the grants that council makes. So community groups can apply for these grants, and these are pools of money that we can hand out to those community groups to do the stuff they do. Those have been trimmed back significantly, and you can see that there. So so the Cambridge Community Board, the Parongia Ward Committee, and the Te Awamutu Community Board. So whereas the two community boards had funding of 49,600 given them to by council to run discretionary funding schemes in their communities, that 49,600 in both cases has dropped down to 20,000, and the 27,600 that we allocated to the Parongia Ward Committee for exactly the same sort of deal, that has been cut back to $10,000. The district promotion fund. So this is sort of community-based type events that that are essentially, I suppose, provide the ability for groups to run, or assist groups to run community events that are kind of good for the economy, etc. That's been halved from 150,000 down to 75,000. The community event fund has gone completely, so that $30,000, which was for more major events, that's been taken out completely, and then the Heritage Fund, which was at 70,000 per annum, that's dropped down to 35,000. So look, these are quite significant cuts of funding. We appreciate that a lot of community groups will be quite concerned about those drops. Bearing in mind that these are the numbers that are going into the draft LTP, and there will, I would fully expect some of those community groups obviously to be submitting into this plan on this sort of matter. Okay. Right, so now into I guess really into the numbers in terms of the rates increases that are being proposed, because of course 14.8% is quite a big number. But look, one of the significant challenges that a district, a provincial district such as Waipa has, is that there is a different incidence of rates in different sectors of land use. and in different geographical areas. So while the 14.8% is the increase in the total rate requirement for the district, it is essentially an average, and there will be a range around it. Why is that? So not all property owners are provided with the same services, and we use targeted rates quite extensively to focus rate charges on the properties that are obviously being provided with the service or being provided with the benefit. Examples of that, so wastewater and water, obviously those activities are very largely provided in urban residential areas. So the charges for those are only applied to properties that are being serviced. And in fact, in the water space, the very big part of the application of the charges for that is actually done through metered water. So it's almost like a user pay system. You get charged for every cubic meter of water that you use. Recycling, it's only provided to households, so that is actually in urban areas as well as rural areas, but only to households. We don't offer a recycling service to our commercial and industrial properties. Urban stormwater infrastructure is significantly more intensive than what is needed or provided in the rural space. So separate targeted rates in the urban and rural areas for stormwater provision, and a very big difference in the level of the rates that are charged there. So look, over the next few slides, I'm just going to walk you through a selection of indicator properties to illustrate the differing impacts on properties that have similar characteristics, and the application of the same target rate, so you can sort of see what the incidence of rate increase will be in all areas of our community by virtue of the illustration of these indicator properties. Each slide will show a lower valued property, a mid-valued property, and a high-valued property in that geographic location and for that land use. But look, I thought it would just be helpful, just before I get into the detail, because there are quite a few slides, to summarise the range of rates increases on those indicated properties. I thought that would be worthwhile doing. So look, all of these properties, no matter what sort of land use they have, obviously they're all being impacted by generalised inflation. So the generalised inflation that I talked about before, they're all absolutely being impacted by that. However, so urban residential increases are also being greatly impacted by recycling. And remember, I said the recycling rate requirement has gone up 55%, and urban stormwater costs, and remember I said that they've gone up by 82%. They are also being impacted by an 18% increase in the cost of metered water. So so in those urban residential properties, those are really big drivers, and you'll see that soon. Rural residential properties, they escape the increased costs in the water, wastewater, and urban stormwater space because generally they are not provided with those services. However, there is still, and you can see there, the $4 a week ranging up to $10 per week. You can see that there's still a broad range that is essentially driven by the capital value. There's quite a bit of variation in the capital value of some of those rural residential properties. Rural properties, so here, I mean, translate that in our community is essentially farms or horse studs or whatever else there is out there. So rural properties, again, they don't have the urban related costs of water, wastewater, and urban stormwater, but often those properties have very significant CVs or larger CVs. And so hence quite a range in the dollar increases for those rural properties. And then a similar dynamic, I suppose, in the commercial and industrial space. The higher increases, the $7 to $29, most of that. So the story there is all about the capital value of those properties due to that generalised inflation that's coming through. So so you can even see within these categories big ranges of increases. But hopefully it's been helpful for me to describe some of the more generalistic things in there, and I'll just speak to them now much more specifically. So so you're looking there on that side at Cambridge urban residential properties. So significant impact to Cambridge urban residential properties from the recycling increases, from the water charge increases, and urban stormwater. So the percentages are higher than the 14.8%. Remember the 14.8% very much an average because of those factors I've just talked about: recycling water, urban stormwater. These properties are going to be higher than the 14.8. But look, I'd also draw your attention to the dollar impact, the top line there in terms of what that is. And again, you can see quite a bit of variation there, but look at the variation in capital value. So we're dealing in terms of the 11.19 per week with a property that's got a capital value of 645,000. At the other end of the scale, the $23.56 per week, you're dealing with a property with a capital value of $2.5 million. So certainly a big variation in the capital value, and you see that coming through in the dollars. Okay, in terms of the Te Awamutu, so similar, in fact, exactly the same drivers as for the Cambridge properties. So again, you're seeing those at higher than 14.8%. But generally the CVs are lower than in Cambridge. So hence lower dollar increases coming through there for the TA urban residential properties. Okay, Pirongia Village. So very much residential properties that we're dealing with here. Okay, so no wastewater provision in Pirongia Village. So that creates that means a much lower base in terms of the rates that they're paying, a much lower base, which therefore makes the impact of the recycling, the water, and the urban stormwater increases much more significant on a percentage basis. So look, you're seeing percentage increases in the 20% there, but in terms of if you look at the dollar values, they're very similar to the Cambridge and Te Awamutu. It's just the much lower base there, and like I say, that's all about the fact that they are self-sufficient in terms of wastewater with septic tanks, etc. Ohopua Village Residential, so very much the same as Pirongia. Again, no wastewater provision in Ohopua. So the lower base makes that percentage increase higher, but again, in very similar territory in terms of dollar increases to those other larger residential areas. Now, Hinapori, so again, just a little bit different again. So in Hinapori, there is not only is there no wastewater servicing, but there's also no water provision either. So they don't have the water provision. And in fact, in Hinapori, they are actually, that's not actually urban stormwater either. So they're actually paying the rural stormwater rate. So that results in much lower percentages. The percentages come down certainly from those other two villages that you've seen, and the dollars are also considerably lower as well because they're just not getting the same servicing. Okay, Cambridge rural residential. So no water, no wastewater, rural stormwater instead of urban stormwater. So lower percentages, lower dollars than urban residential should make sense. Te Awamutu rural residential, very much the same as what you've just seen for Cambridge. Very similar profile in terms of the percentages, in terms of the dollars, and the ranges that you're seeing there is just is all about capital value in terms of where the capital value lies. But right, then into our farming properties, so our rural properties, so Pirongia starting off here. So look, a really broad, in fact, you can see an incredibly broad range of increases here in percentage terms. they are all sitting below the 14.8%, and that's because there is no water, there's no wastewater, etc. The higher dollar value increases are driven by much higher capital values. And also you can see here, a lot of our rates are done on a SUP basis, an SUIP basis, separately used and inhabited portion, because a number of farming properties have multiple dwellings. Where there are multiple dwellings, there is a second charge in terms of things like the UAGC and the recycling rate, etc. So you see the multiple SUPs, so that introduces a bit more of a dynamic. But apart from that, you're largely seeing, obviously, the dollars following the capital value, because of course you've actually you're starting on the left hand side with a $1 million property. It is in a rural area, but it's clearly not a dairy farm at that value. You're looking at obviously at the other end for much more your dairy farming territory, and much higher CV. Kakapuku rural, so again very similar profile to the Prongia rural. Again we've introduced a property there with 2 SUPs, so there'll be two dwellings on that farm property. But you're seeing those below the 14.8% headline, and you're seeing the range of the dollar increase per week, very reflective of the capital value. And then lastly, in that space, Mangatauteri. So again, very similar profile to the last 2 slides. A low valued property, obviously in that rural space, 870,000, 3.29%, and only $1.70 a week increase. But then a much higher value property at the other end, where it's 11.37 and 21.29. Okay, so that's all your rural properties. Just about at the end, I think two more to go, and taking us into the commercial industrial space. And look, in this space, the dollars are very much capital value driven. Okay, so the low capital value there of 530,000, the high capital value nearly 3.5 million. That's pretty much is the reason behind the 797 per week at the left hand end, and the 28.73 per week at the other end. Look, those are generally, well, actually, other than the middle one, those are generally lower than the 14.8%. They're not charged for recycling, and of course, in that recycling space is a very large increase. So these properties are not getting that, or at least they're not getting that on their rates bill. Assuming they're doing private recycling. Tiamutu commercial industrial, very much the same picture as I've just showed you for Cambridge. Quite a range of capital values, and you can see what the rates increases are in that space. All of them below the 14.8%, and a range of dollars per week. Okay, so so I know that I've hit you with a huge number of numbers there, but I think it is important that you do see that picture. Key takeout messages in regard to the finances are that that there's clearly much higher increases in year 1 to year 4, largely driven by those uncontrollables of the inflation, the interest rates, etc. And in fact, recognising that, as I say, we quantified those uncontrollables at 16%, we've come in with a headline number of 14.8%. So we've actually come within those. We have pared that back as much as possible. So at the start of this journey, I don't think I mentioned this at the start. Our first cut of these budgets several months ago was I believe it was around 34%. It was certainly in the 30s. We've done 4 significant iterations of the 10-year budgets, and obviously sort of pared it back every time as we've tried to take cost out of the equation, as we've tried to to introduce or maximise the revenue that we're getting from non-rating sources. All of local government is experiencing this. I did mention that before. So you've got your Hamilton cities who have gone public. We know that many of our neighbours are dealing in very much the similar territory to what we are. But the other key message is that this does fall unevenly across the district. There's a range around the average. Much of that percentage increase is very much driven by what services each property is benefiting from. But the dollars are influenced very strongly by capital value because actually, and I may not have mentioned this, but obviously a large part of our rates requirement is met from a general rate, which is done on capital value or levied on capital value, and that urban stormwater, which in those urban residential areas, that's actually quite a big factor. That is also levied on capital value, the stormwater rate. Apart from those two, most of the rest are uniform rates, the same amount per property that's receiving the benefit. But because of the general rate and the urban stormwater rate, CB does play quite a big part in determining the dollars, and you've certainly seen that on those previous slides. I've talked a huge amount. In fact, I need a bit of a sip of water. But Your Worship, I guess what we're looking to do, actually it's helpful if I go to the slide, my apologies. I guess what we're looking to do is just ask this question. So is the 10-year budget, and of course, how that flows through into properties in terms of the rates increases that I've showed you this morning. Are you okay with that for consultation purposes? Because of course, what we're looking to do now very much is to move through to that, and in fact, we'll come back to that at the end. But look, I've just thrown you a whole lot of financial information. Are you fine with that? Can we proceed? So Your Worship, I suggest you throw it open on that basis.
Oh, thank you, Ken. Great deal of work obviously involved in this, and really pleased that you've shown a real willingness to try and find these savings where we can. So look, I'll throw the floor open. Monty had his hand up, then Roger, then Claire.
Thanks, Susan. Just a couple of scene setting questions for me, and it's just drilling in on the debt forecast to start with. And it's largely driven by CapEx, of course. So renewal CapEx is coming out of depreciation. Level of service CapEx is debt funded. Growth CapEx is essentially growth funded. So if I follow through the CapEx forecast and the debt projection, to make it add up, you have to be assuming that very little is coming in by way of development contributions early. Is that a fair assessment? I can give you a specific number.
Cool.
So like year one, our forecast end of this current year debt position is 309 million. End of year one is 452, so 143 million in debt, okay? And the capital program's only 180. 37 of that is renewal, 27 level of service. So the vast majority of that debt increase is actually growth CapEx, okay? Which means that essentially it's growth funded. Yeah. So is that a fair assessment that you are assuming that very little is coming back in these early years?
Yeah. So through Your Worship, I did see Tony Coots throw up his hand when you started asking that question, and he's our growth man. So do you want to? Yeah.
So yes, we have calculated a lower revenue over those first 3 years based on the economic climate that we're sitting at. So, but that doesn't stop the fact that you need to install and invest core infrastructure linkages in the first couple of years to ensure that recovery comes over time. So that level of debt is based on the investment to ensure that recovery comes over a longer stretch of time. So it's just more accurate in understanding what our revenue is looking like and forecasted based on the development agreements we've got, the DC notices, and we put that through the DC model to calculate that revenue and adjust based on what was going to be expected in those first 3 years. And then we reforecasted out that for the years 4 to 10 to ensure that we're in line with our future projections as well. So yeah, we did assume a lower level of revenue based on growth, which is affecting those numbers and the interest rates.
Okay, and if we could just follow on, thanks for the answer. So so I picked up on that, and then if you take 100 million of CapEx growth as a percentage of our property, plant and equipment, it's like roughly 4%. So we're doing growth CapEx at roughly 4%, and yet our growth projections now are just, I see, coming down under 2%. So the obvious question there is, are we overbuilding in that growth CapEx? And I hear what you're saying, you're future-proofing, but those growth figures have come down, right, from recently, but our growth CapEx figures kind of haven't. So it's just a bit of a challenge there. We're growing population-wise or rating-wise at 2%, but we're building at 4%. And these are really big numbers. Growth CapEx is the big driver of everything here. So what do you think of that challenge?
Yeah, I suppose it's based on the level of investment that's already gone to date. So a lot of them have already been approved through infrastructure works agreements. It's just the timing of when those infrastructure investments come online. And so those years, 24, 25 and 25, 26, that's based on the current IWAs and future infrastructure that we've seen from consents come through the door. So, and then the projection of that fund recovery coming in, it's about 18-month lag time between you do that initial investment before you start to see that drip recovery come in. So again, it goes to what's already been committed under current agreements or forecasted agreements. And then it's just taking in a realistic conservative baseline of what that growth projection looks like based on the DCs that we've got to date. So we understand that it's a bit concerning that it's come through, but again, it goes back to, if you don't invest in that, the growth column is also going to go down further. So the reliance on growth is kind of hand in hand with both of those, and you need to make that capital investment given the level of service requirements have changed throughout the years, and those growth investments have become higher and higher.
Okay, thanks. And my final question, I won't hold the floor. Can you give us a sense, because we're peaking at year 2 at 576 million, which is a concerning figure, what percentage of that is DC, is growth, and therefore DC funded? Can you give us that number? Because it's quite an important one to know, I believe.
I'll have a chat with Sharon just in the corner just to see what we've got on the DC model to come back and circle back to that.
Yeah, fantastic questions as always, Monty. Roger, then Claire.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Ken, I realise totally that in terms of legislation, we are not enabled to include Three Waters in year 3. However, there is a reasonably high chance that in fact the Three Waters legislation will be in some way rescinded by this new government. Have you played the what if game and said, what if we have to include Three Waters in our budget? What impact will that have directly on year 3 of our rating model?
Okay. Yeah, so look, we haven't, firstly, we have built some numbers in the background in terms of, what is the cost of the Three Waters activity for the whole 10 years. So CapEx, operational, etc. We do have those numbers. I guess our focus up till now, and look, this has been an incredibly challenging LTP. Our focus has been up till now building this to the to be able to offer up what we've offered up today so far. That's been our absolute focus. So look, we haven't done a lot of manipulation of those numbers and brought those in. Actually, we did. Actually, I was going to say we did actually at one point. One of our previous iterations was actually Waters in for the first 3 years, and it was sort of, it was not too dissimilar from what it is in years 1 and 2. 2. But look, we certainly haven't carried that through to the years 4 to 10. We do have that information. We were looking, obviously, like I say, all our efforts have been getting it to the point that we're at now, because look, we don't believe we've got too many alternatives other than to probably even go out and to the public and consultation on just on the years 1 and 2. However, I can give you assurance before we get to that place in the early part of next year, we will look to be giving you the kind of information that you've asked for.
Yes, but you can't give us any indication of what that year 3 would look like if we did have the 3 waters in. You've already acknowledged that, in fact, some of our major capital projects, the impact of those will not be felt until year 3. Because the borrowing will go on in years 1 and 2. And so we're faced with having to say, well, the LTP, the first 3 years are the active 3 years, if you like, because they are those which we make the decision now that will definitely be our policy going forward, years 4, years 5, years 6 in future. We've got the opportunity to reconsider those in the next LTP. So we're really committing a lot of capital expenditure in that years 2 and year 3 when we have an unsure environment where we're going to get the 3 waters brought back on board as well. So in fact, that could be a major impact. And I'm just wondering whether that would, if we knew what that 3 waters was going to be in year 3, whether in fact we'd make a different decision on some of the capital projects that are in front of us.
So like I say, I'm not sure I can find it for you right now, but in a previous iteration, we did have waters in year 3. So we could provide that info. I don't believe it looked alarming, Roger, but look, we'd have to dig out that information again. And we'd also have to work through some of the other changes that we've sort of done in the budget space that would impact into that as well. But look, I think, so the next time we come back to you is the 18th of January. I'm pretty sure we can bring that picture to you on the 18th of January. Certainly with year 3, what that would look like with waters still in the mix.
Okay. And another question, just in clarification, in terms of our first year funding, could you remind me of what the total Better Off funding was that we received and how that was allocated?
Oh, again, I don't have that at my fingertips unless Dawn, would you? Would you be able to answer in that space?
Kia ora koutou, through your worship, 5.24 million from memory was the total sum. How it was allocated was across a number of projects, and that I don't have at my fingertips at the moment, I'm afraid, but can certainly get that for you.
Yeah, I think that would, be good, because in terms of the first year funding of some of the capital projects, I believe that our submission, our idea was that some of the capital projects in year 1 was in fact funded by that Better Off funding.
Through your worship, it's in fact funding projects this financial year as well. And in fact runs right through to 26-27 in terms of the last project is the implementation of the reserve management plan for Ngā Rauta.
Am I correct in remembering that, in fact, the design of Te Arawai was covered by that Better Off funding?
And my expectation is the majority of that funding is this financial year in terms of achieving a concept plan by June 2024.
If I can, through the chair, just to confirm that yes, that's true. And also to highlight that any fundings from Better Off would also be already considered within the LTP if that was appropriate. So it would be a funding line that would offset the costs in the LTP as it currently stands in the draft.
Thank you.
Clear.
Thanks. So I've got two main topics I'd like to speak to. The first is about the impacts for Pirongia and the indicator properties, and the second is about the consultation topics. So firstly, I just feel that the 21% increase proposed for the Pirongia Village indicator property is just too high. Okay, I'm not happy with it. My assessment of it is mainly, as Ken has mentioned, the recycling charge, which I guess, you know, is unavoidable, but the other one is the urban stormwater increases. So I feel it's completely inequitable that Pirongia Village and possibly Ōhaupo as well are treated at the same kind of level of investment for urban stormwater as Cambridge and Te Awamutu, because they are absolutely completely different creatures. In Pirongia, we've got the barest minimum of infrastructure. Most of our stormwater, and you know, I suppose management is open swales and drains. Okay, I just cannot see how between $400 and $500 per property is justified. In fact, my conclusion is that while we've got this comprehensive stormwater discharge consent that we've got to work towards, the assumption's been made that the level of investment is equivalent for Te Awamutu and Cambridge as it is for Pirongia and possibly Ōhaupo. Now, I've asked in the past to have a breakdown of the, I suppose, the investment that's been put into stormwater for Pirongia, and I've been told that information isn't available, we don't separate it out. Well, I think it's time it was, because if this is what we're going out on it, I am not supporting it. I need to know what specifically is on the cards for complying with that comprehensive stormwater consent for Pirongia and Ōhaupo, because you need to justify that it's at the same level as Te Awamutu and Cambridge. So that's my first pretty firm stance in the ground. The second one is about the consultation topic. So I'm really...
Can I just interrupt on that one?
Yeah.
Can we move to the consultation document once we deal with this?
Yeah.
So
Okay,
give
cool.
Ken a
All right.
chance to answer that first barrage
Yeah.
of questions.
Yeah. So look, thank you, Your Worship, and I was going to say that I've done the first half of this presentation. Very soon, we'll work through the second half on those consultation topics. So in regard to what you've just said about the urban stormwater, so look, fundamentally, in this district, we have always rated all of our activities, so virtually all of our activities, very much on a district-wide basis. So the cost of water provision, no matter where you are in the district, if you are being provided with water, whether it be in Cambridge, whether it be in whether it be in Te Awamutu, whether it be in Ōhaupo, you will get exactly the same water costs. Same with the wastewater. So look, it's done district-wide. In fact, not too many years ago, a little bit before my time, but I think not much before my time, we brought on Kiiki in terms of wastewater provision, is my understanding. There was that would have been unaffordable for the Kiiki community if we had separately partitioned those costs and rated them on the Kiiki community. So look, in terms of the wastewater, it's only households that are connected to the wastewater that obviously get the charge, but it doesn't matter whether you live in Kiiki, whether you live in Cambridge, whether you live in Te Awamutu, you get exactly the same charge. So we do that right across. I mean, we do that with our roading as well. The roading is actually met out of a capital value rate and a UAGC, but it doesn't matter where you live in this district. You are being rated on the same basis for that. So look, urban stormwater is no different. The only distinction we make, obviously, in that stormwater space is obviously urban versus rural. But in terms of urban stormwater, again, whether you live in Pirongia Village or whether you live in Cambridge or Te Awamutu, you get the urban stormwater charge. So so like I say, fundamentally, if you're asking us to look at that, I mean, are you asking us to look at that for water and wastewater and stuff as well? Because because that could create some huge affordability issues for some of our smaller communities if we break down those costs in each community and actually rate separately for each community. You would have some communities where it's probably uneconomic to provide that service. Like I say, just go back 15, 20 years ago when we introduced it to Kiki, it would have been unaffordable for that community if we'd separately levied a key wastewater rate.
So thanks for that. It's just I can see the argument for like wastewater, drinking water, roading, because I'd say the level of service that everyone gets across is pretty equivalent. But the point I was making is the level of service that Pirongia is getting for urban stormwater is significantly, visibly, very different. That's all. And I appreciate that it's always been done in the past on a whole of district-wide basis. But perhaps, well, I was asking for some numbers, I guess, what would it look like? Because really, it does appear to me to be inequitable, and that maybe now is the time to consider that. But the level of service that's being received is markedly different.
Liz and then Philip.
Yeah, look, I do have some sympathy in that space, actually, Claire, because I know you've raised it numerous times. I guess, just tongue in cheek, Ahaupo, largely some of the community sits on a hill. That's a bit of a bonus, I suppose. But for Pirongia in particular, those open swales are very obvious to me. So perhaps, would certainly support perhaps some more work in that space. And let's just take another look at it, just on that particular item.
Philip and then Mike. Oh, Martin looks like he's got some.
So the simple answer is Pirongia doesn't flood, nor do other places which one. So therefore they receive the same level of service as everybody else by we're providing infrastructure, whether it be swales or pipes, to remove the stormwater so people don't flood. So whether it's a swale or a pipe, the level of service is the same, is the simple term. And from when we get the new consent, the requirements will be equally spread across Pirongia as they are against an urban requirement to provide a better quality discharge. When it leaves that swale into the receiving environment, it will need to be treated better. So everywhere is going to have a level of increase in treatment required and the quality of discharge, regardless of whether it's a swale or a pipe system. Is the simplest way I can try and answer that.
That's really helpful, actually, Martin, because you've demonstrated that it's actually it's once it's gone through the swales, before it actually hits either the groundwater or the river, whatever. So there's no allowance that the open swales must surely be cheaper to install and then maintain than, for instance, pipes and things like that. Which most of the
So the swales require more maintenance than a pipe in the ground. The pipe in the ground we look at infrequently, whereas a swale we have to keep maintained, weed sprayed, all that stuff. So there's a balance there somewhere. Yeah.
A balance between the capital versus the operational.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Anything else, Claire? Philip, then Mike.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, guys, for your report. Just with regards to the restoration of the town hall, I see that year 3 now, and there's money allocated for that, which is great. Is that new money, or because it's my understanding in this current long-term plan, there's about 3 million that was allocated for roofing or upgrading of the town hall. Is that new money or is that just money just been transferred from this current year, current long-term
Current
plan?
long-term plan, yeah. So through your worship, I'm happy to answer that. Look, it's a bit of a mix of both, actually. So yes, in the current LTP, there is funding provision, and I think it was in the order of 3 to 4 million. A similar number to what you quoted. It is now in the figures that we put in the draft LTP for the one we're about to consult on. We boosted that boosted that level of funding up. So it's a mixture of both old money and new money.
One small question, a further question, just a small one. In there's got lighting, renewal of lighting. There's renewal of lighting or additional lighting. Is that street lighting and things like that around the CBD? I mean, there's been lots of comments from, and probably over here in Te Awamutu, but in Cambridge, with regards to people that work in town having to walk to their cars in the evenings. I mean, is that new street parking for the CBD, or is that just up and down streets and things like that? So
through your worship,
I don't know if you can answer that.
Yeah, through your worship, street lighting. Actually, I'm just talking to Brian or Dawn. If I'm not sure what budget provision's been put in for street lighting, but
an appropriate question.
Can you remember the number, Philip, or roughly the number?
It was. I just had it right here a moment ago. It was very low. Sorry, it's just opening up again. CapEx.
So through you, Madam Chair, I can give it a little bit of an overview while we find it. So there's two lighting replacement or renewal budgets there. There's one unsubsidised, which is in car parks and decorative lighting, and that's a relatively small number where we replace light fittings each year. Then there's a larger one in the roading program proper for the street lighting. Again, that's renewals, and it's over $100,000 a year, I think, from memory, and it's replacing poles and lights that reach the end of their life.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily additional.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Liz.
Yeah, I just want to come back to the town hall. So we just go through things in a logical order. So obviously we've got the town hall, which is now being managed by an independent volunteer organisation, the Trust. And they've come and they have regularly indicated to us that their capital spend is likely to be quite large, given the state of the facility. And there's no doubt in my mind that their investigations to date are probably pretty accurate, given it hasn't really had a lot of maintenance, for the best part of 50 years, actually. So I guess kind of think that 6 million that's in the long-term plan is a little on the light side, given that we've been given early indications it's going to be about 20 million. Now, we always understood that organisation would be fundraising externally themselves, and there's no, and I know that they are absolutely committed to doing that. But I think that to ask them to do that the gap then is just far too large, and I think just too big a mountain for that volunteer group to be trying to fundraise. So I would really like to see, and it might be to the detriment of other projects, I appreciate that, but I really think that if we want to maintain the Cambridge Town Hall to the standard that our community expects us to, and for it to be usable and for it to be activated in the way we all want it to be activated, that the 6 million is a little bit light, and I'd like to see it go up to 10, please.
Mike.
Right, through the chair. Couple of things, maybe three things. One is for Ken. Get you on the move. Just concur with the pressures around inflation and interest and depreciation, which gets sort of thrust on us. Just looking at our growth figures for the first 4 years of this plan versus the back 6 years of the plan. So it's on page 3 of the 34. The first sort of 4 years average out at 1.79% growth, but then the back 6 years average out at 3.6%. There's a real sort of line where it massively increases which is a double, it's a difference of almost exactly double. How do we get to that figure and how confident are we? Because it does make a big difference to rate implication, say average over the 10 years. First question.
Yeah. Hey, so look, yeah, so I'll speak in, I guess, in general terms. So, yeah, so in terms of our growth projections, actually what these growth projections here are is very much, what is going to be the increase in capital value for the, and because our, as I said before, there's a couple of quite significant rates that are rated on capital value. And also, what's the additional number of properties that are going to result in the year as well, because a number of the other rates are per property, like our UAGC is X dollars per property. So look, so there's been there is some science behind these numbers, but look, in general terms as well, I guess we have been advised by Brad Olsen of Infometrics. We do lean on Infometrics and Brad in particular for commentary in relation to economic things such as growth. So I guess this was largely informed by indications from Brad that for the first 3 or 4 years, your growth will certainly be down. Perhaps thereafter, we'll return back to what we've seen more recently. Look, to be fair, it's probably worth another check-in with Brad in the not too distant future in terms of whether things have changed in that space. Because things move along. We've got a new government that's just come in that may change things. So look, we could probably have a bit more of a look at that growth figure. Before we bring this back to you, we could potentially tweak that. I would say as well, in general, it is helpful to be relatively conservative in that growth space, because of course we do have some issues if we set a growth target and then don't achieve it. That can create problems on its own. So the trick here is to be conservative and make sure we achieve it. But also we do want to be realistic, because that does make a big difference in the amount that we need to rate. That feeds through directly into our rates requirement, what we expect that level of growth to be. So so through a worship, the team can certainly have another look at those growth numbers and do a bit of checking in and just make sure that that it's still looking okay. But I would reinforce that it's only ever an estimate. It's only ever an estimate. It's really hard to to actually project accurately in that space.
Yeah, all right. Thank you for the explanation and for looking at going back to that. All right, my next one is on page 11, and it's around the draft consultation topics, and it's the second one there, really, Total Y. And just, we've had discussions around... Sorry.
We're on
Stay away from that. All right, I'll go back.
No, we'll deal with it logically. Keep away from the draft consultation just for now.
So can I come back to then the town hall, okay, is number 3. And there's money, $6.3 million in year 3 for the town hall. I agree with Liz. I think we need to up this to give these folks a chance to rejuvenate this town hall, which I do believe councils over the years have dropped us in this position of us being in this position of needing to spend a hell of a lot of money on this in a pretty short amount of time. But I'm looking at year 5 and I'm looking at 2% growth rate, and I would like to see the difference between that 6.3 mil and maybe another 3.7 be looked at, whether we could put it into to sort of soften that. It'll bring that 2.7% rate increase in year 5 up. It'll bring it up. There's no two ways about that. But it doesn't bring any extra costs into the first 4 years, which is really where the big part of our sort of our whack of CapEx is. So it's just a way of moving forward of maybe how we can do the 10. Yep.
Yeah, so through your worship, and in response to that, so one of the, I mean, I've engaged quite a lot, obviously, with the new Cambridge Town Hall Trust. That sits in my area of responsibility, the engagement with that group. And look, one of the big things that they've constantly said to us is that the timing is really, really important. So they are very comfortable with the timing in year 3. They have indicated that they would be very, very, very concerned if it got pushed out any further. Also, I think the thing going on there is that I have raised with them in the past is can we do this on a more modular basis, like can we give you a chunk of money in year 3 and then perhaps 3 or 4 years later another chunk of money, and you kind of do this in stages. They have indicated that just given the nature of what they're looking to achieve there, that probably wouldn't work. So so I think that's the problem. So I hear the call for the amount of funding to increase, but look, I'm just not sure we can really change the timing or look to do that on a modular basis. I think if we were to increase the funding, they would be saying, I mean, they'd be certainly incredibly appreciative of that, because as Liz noted before, there's a massive gap between what they're seeing it as, the 19.8 million and the 6.3 that we've got provided. So they'd definitely be looking to to increase that, but I think they'd also be really strongly saying actually timing is really crucial.
So just on that, Ken, I guess that's why I alluded to the fact of year 3 and 5. So it's not years in between, because there's going to be fundraising, etc., happening. And so I thought, I mean, it looks like it's 2 years apart, but in actual fact, it doesn't have to be 2 years apart, really. So I'm saying year 3, leave it as it is, the 6.3 mil. I'm saying for additional revenue, if we could look at it, year 5, which is not, it's only 2 years at the outside later. This is not going to be a 2-year or 3-year project. This work is going to be big contracts that I'm assuming can roll from one to the next. So that's just what I'm putting forward, that year 5, we should be putting another 3.7 in there.
Actually, sorry, can I, I think this is really important. Can I just jump in there for a moment? So look, the other thing that you may not be aware of, but my discussions with the Town Hall Trust, what they're saying is actually this work is so significant that the best way to do it is to basically do it in 1 year. So that they are talking about literally close. So they need to take the Town Hall offline really for a whole year, get this work done, and then open up the doors again. So they just will not be able to actually operate during the time that this really significant capital investment is required. So that's where, in terms of because I've talked to them about surely this work will take a couple of years, and they're saying no, it can't. Right. So they're looking at sort of beginning of year 3. If year 3 is the year, and that's certainly their preference. If year 3 is the year, like it will be close the doors 1 July, open them up again, 1 July the following year. Obviously, won't be exactly on that basis, but it's a 1 year period for construction.
Right. I understand. I hear what you're saying, but if I was going to get another $3.7 million, I would change my methodology. That would be up to them. So yeah. Right. I want to move on then. My next one is the library. And the library / whatever else is in there, Heritage Centre, etc. Starting in year 2, I fully support that, and that looks like quite a longitudinal sort of. There's decent amounts of money drop in there over about 4 or 5 years, 2 to 5. Is that, I've got that right? It adds up to about 28 million. Yep. Right. So no, I mean, it's come through from Ahaki, it's come through from surveys, and there's been a lot of consultation on it. So supportive of that. And the 10-year thing I'm going to come back to, and the last comment is just, of course, the water tower, which we did have in previously, is around about $6.5 million to refurb. If the community support the demolition, if they do, there is a saving of $4.8 million, which has actually helped land on these figures. as high as they are, but just so people realise that we have done some work on this and tried to take out and give the community some significant options here to save some money, to redirect that towards other capital projects.
Yeah. So through your worship, I mean, I guess one of the things there with that water tower, and I guess something that was very much in staff's minds was, if the water tower has to go, because it's really hard to justify spending that that $6 million on it if it has to go. That could be seen as the money that's perhaps going into the Cambridge Town Hall, for instance. Again, another heritage item, so almost like a bit of a transfer through to the Cambridge Town Hall. But yeah,
I like that synergy. But just on Philip's point, the town hall's actually really only gone up around 2.7 or less than 3 mil. Just so we're clear on that, there was about 3.6 right in there. It's gone to 6.3 minus a bit and bobs they might have spent, but yeah, it's not new money.
Who was next? Okay, keep a list here. Roger was.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just furthering on from my last question and looking again at the progressive rates increases over 3 years, and if we take the high probability the Three Waters comes back and another 10% of rating burden on year 3, that effectively makes something compounded of a 60% increase in rates over 3 years. And I'm worried that in there, we do have some nice to haves. And one of the ones that sticks out to me is that we have got a projected capital expenditure on Te Arawai of 33 million across those 3 years. I'm not against Te Arawai. I'm just saying that perhaps it's not the right time. And in fact, it would be better placed if Te Arawai was moved out to year 4 of the 10-year plan, so that it removes some of that risk of the high rates imposition.
I think there'll be a few views on that one. Claire and then Mike.
Yeah, thanks. I sort of feel like we're going over ground that's already been traversed. I think we had a pretty clear direction from staff that timing is really important, that we need to be sticking to the budgets that set out because of the externalities that are really critical to this project. And I think we also had a really good information about the fact that it's not having a rating impact in those early years, which I'm really comfortable about. And that if we don't do this work as it's timed, then the entire project is put at risk, and it's going to make no difference about trying to move it out to later years. I was going to cover this under the consultation topics as well, because I'd like to see balance across the district.
Okay. Just following on from a conversation had earlier, a point you raised, Roger, around Better Off funding. Te Arawai received 1.7 million, Resource Recovery Centre 1.253 million, Lake Ngāroto Management Plan 360,000, Waipa CCTV Network 400,000, the Te Awamutu Te Pirongia Cycleway 1.295 million, and the Cambridge Library Feasibility Study $250,000.
Could I ask for a point of clarification on that, Madam Chair? The 1.7 million to Te Arawai, my understanding is that that has funded the design component, so that enables the external fundraising for that project to proceed.
Sally?
If I can, through the Mayor, yes, that is correct in terms of what Council approved on the 26th of September. We are progressing with the detailed design work, consent applications and fundraising. And as we highlighted at that time, there is some time constraints in terms of central government funding for those works to be done by mid next year.
Great. We can address that later. Mike, you're good? You're good? Right. So in terms of Ken's conversation with us, any other points, Ken?
Yes, so your worship, I think Tony has worked out some information in response to an earlier question from Monty.
Excellent, wonderful, thank you.
Cool. So through the chair, just firstly clarifying the question, making sure I've got that right for the numbers. So you're after just a understanding of how much of the debt that was in year 2 was related to growth CapEx. Is that correct? Yeah. So of that debt, it's sitting around 57% is growth funded. That's due to the length of time of recovery that goes over the expected revenue collection through there, and through the DCs we also recover that interest component as well. So 57%, so that's about 330 million. Yeah.
First of all, Mayor Susan, I want a chocolate fish for asking a question Tony couldn't answer off the top of his head.
Fair enough, fair call. I'll give you some scorched almonds. I saw there was some out there.
Exactly. Hey, so just following on from that, Ken, our debt affordability benchmark is currently set at less than 250% of total revenue. That peak in year 2 is like 4 times total revenue. The way I work it, even increasing last year's revenue by 15%. Does that sound about right? Because we've got a 500 and whatever it is, 576 million peak, and last year total revenue was only 132 mil. Increase that by 15%, I get to 4 times, which is, it's a notable one. We'll have to change that in the finance policy as part of all this, right? If that's the way we're going. Or, and this was a subsequent question, do we start differentiating between DC debt, that is, the interest is funded elsewhere, and you've got a reasonable expectation of recovery and therefore debt repayment, as opposed to 30-year CapEx funded stuff that is, they're different, right? And once you're getting up to these rarefied debt levels, it's kind of really nice to understand what you're looking at.
Great call, Monty. Great call. Any other, Ken, have you got any?
Actually, sorry. So we will need to obviously look at that, but recognising that that a big chunk of that debt is obviously going to disappear in year 3. So at the time our revenue drops, our debt is significantly dropping as well. So
you're talking about waters, yeah, okay,
yeah, with the waters going. So look, I'm just not sure, Monty. I haven't got an answer for you right now, but I'm just not sure it's as as concerning as that.
Yep.
But look, we need to we need to have a look at that. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, clear.
So The points that Monty's raised, I've also raised them in the past. And Ken, I'm sure you did say that we would look at reporting it in a way that did separate out, that growth-related debt that isn't repaid through rates, that hopefully you could sort of demonstrate the expectation, of how it would reduce over time.
Yes.
DC repayment and that.
I looked through your worship. It will be a major topic area for the financial strategy. And in regard to that, and breaking down the components of debt, looking at how they are repaid over time. So as will whatever percentage be as well. But like I say, I mean you can see in that debt graph that I showed before, the debt more than halves, or sorry, close to halves in year 3, obviously with the waters disappearing. So obviously we have a massive drop in revenue in the same year, but the things will be relatively proportionate, I would have thought. But look, more work needs to be done on that. Before the 18th of January, when we bring back a financial strategy that explores those issues. Yeah.
Monty, yeah.
Just one more, and this is me done. And totally flipping around our analysis on this. So rather than looking where we can spend less, approaching this from the point of view of looking after what we've got. So we've got property, plant, and equipment of 2.4 billion on the balance sheet. Our depreciation is roughly 31 million or so, and our renewal CapEx, which should match that, roughly does. Okay, so it sort of looks all right. I just want to ask Gary a question. From iteration 1 of this budget to iteration 4, I believe we're on, you've saved millions of dollars. I just wanted to have a sense of what activity management plans in this organisation you've sort of put under the most stress and therefore the most risk to achieve that. So I'm coming at this the other way around, like that I'm checking that we're not cutting too hard, that 15% is not giving ourselves problems in the future, okay? So what part of the business have you stressed most to do that?
So it's been a whole of organisation effort, Mike, and so all of the asset management plans have been under the same degree of scrutiny. I wouldn't say that there's been one area of the organisation that's suffered cuts more than the other, but it's one of these things, we're all in this together and we look very closely at every element of our business to get to this position, including using all of our reserves. I guess the message to the staff has been that, you know, ratepayers are going to do this really hard and you know, we need to be in there with them. I think there are significant risks if we start to cut the budgets even further, and that will be, you know, how the organisation will appear or how the district will appear visibly. You know, you'll effectively start to affect property values because the place won't be presented as well as it is now. I guess if there's an area of the organisation where we've really focused on the people part of that is in the growth area. And so we've not been replacing positions as folks have left, and we'll need to be quite responsive to an increase in growth so that we bring back those consenting staff, the building control staff that we've been shedding as the workload has dropped off.
Comfortable with that, Monty? Cool. Excellent. Anything else? Liz?
Yeah, I just wanted to come back to the Te Arawai because there's been a few comments made in regards to that project. So we have obviously been working on this for a long time, and we're supportive of the project. But there just did come a question around the tenure of the land that I think needs to be resolved before we start rushing into spending money. And I think that's a discussion I would quite like just to have an understanding around this table that is something that is going to progress and be sorted before we get into some large spending in year one, because I look at Te Arawai in years 1, 2 and 3 and I see some large amounts, and I just really want to be sure, and this is just on the back of Monty, I think some of your previous comments, probably Roger too, that's something we really want to get settled. So I just want to open that discussion up.
Sally.
If I can through the Mayor, all I'd like to say is that yes, recognise that this is a request that has come through from Council. It is currently being worked on and will be reported back along with design and hold points with the project. So would just like to leave it there if I can.
Mike.
Well, I won't say any more, but that's what I was going to talk about, but I'm going to leave it in the next part.
Clear.
Couple of more budget questions.
Absolutely, go for it.
Yeah, cool. So I'm looking at capital and its community facilities and its cemetery land acquisition. Just that in year 3, there's 7.3 million. And I'm pretty sure that's related to that review that was done for cemeteries, and it indicated that we're going to need to expand our capacity, which means purchasing land. Now, I am aware that that study was done on the basis that we would continue with lawn interments in the same sort of, I suppose, pace that we have been. But there was a note in that report that if ash interments were incentivised or encouraged more, we wouldn't need to be buying more land like that. So I just wanted to check that out, that are we actually being really conservative with that amount, that if we tried to pull the levers on encouraging more ash interments, that in fact we might even be able to avoid that $7 million expenditure? So that was the first one that I had.
Yeah, Brad has been waving his hand around.
If I could, through the mayor. So no, we'll still need to acquire more land for cemeteries, regardless of the levers we can pull. The levers we can pull will help slow things down, but we are going to be at capacity, especially in Hautapu, Te Amuru and Patarangi cemeteries before too long. So we do need to acquire in this next 10-year plan. We are as well looking to use some triggers through fees and charges to promote ash burial over lawns.
Thank you. And the second, well, I just thought it was worth exploring. Yeah. And the second item was under OPEX, and it's also community facilities, Brad. It's 2352 is the project number, and it's conservation reserves development. And it's about $200,000 a year on that. Are those reserves that council doesn't own? But I was interested to understand what the title conservation reserves development means. Yeah. And is that a relationship that you have with like the Department of Conservation or something?
So again, through the mayor, this relates to our weed species, but also pest management of a lot of our restoration zones, Naroto, Mangakawere, Koromatua, things like that. So it's all those types of reserves. Yep.
Thanks, Claire. Liz.
No one else. Yeah, just another budget item. Just this is probably a Sally question, actually. Sorry, Sally, I'm not picking on you today. Major events, and it's the 2284. I just wasn't sure. I know that we created this some years ago when we had major events, but I'm not aware of any coming up. And unless that budget is for something else. There's about 80,000 per year in the EC, so I thought it was quite a significant chunk of money.
So that is titled through the mayor, is for our support of our events that we do have across the district. It includes support for the setup, etc. around that, as well as more of a marketing focus in that space. So it is a budget that we have had for some time in terms of the event space. So while it's titled major events, it covers support to all events across the district.
Okay, no, thanks for that, Sally. That explains.
Could I ask for
perfectly.
clarification on that point, Sally, through you, Madam Chair? The allocation of that funding for major events, is that for existing events in the main, or is it for the generation of new events?
It's a mixture of both. So it's it's used for generation of new events or supporting new events. There has also been through the district promotion subcommittee a request to review criteria and eligibility, which the staff are currently working on, and that is due to be in place through working with that subcommittee for the next funding round, recognising that we also presented today a reduction in those budgets. So very much need to take on board what the subcommittee have provided staff to do a review of that. But this budget is for all events, so it's either new or others that have been in our district for some time.
Thanks for that. I mean, I'd find it difficult to see that there was a good use of funds if it's something that's been going to an event that's successful and has been going for maybe 10, 15 years or something like that.
Okay. Mike.
Yeah, thank you. Through the mayor, line 98 or 2587, and that's Lake Te Kutu. And it's just really a memory refresh. From our last LTP, from memory, we put about $5.6 million towards that project, but a lot of it was going to be through asset sales and maybe fundraising or something. Is that project still in there? Maybe a Brad question or?
Yeah, thanks again through the mayor. Yes, that project is still in there, and you're correct that it is 100% asset sale funded.
Right. I have a couple of questions. I'll start with on the CapEx column under community facilities. Just play provision outside structure plan. It's a million and a half. Like it's quite a lot. Can you? I couldn't think out for the life of me what that was. It must be a Brad or a Sally question.
Kia ora. So this is dealing with like infill growth.
Okay.
Yeah, so this captures projects. We used some of that budget recently for the Centennial Park upgrade, where there's new growth that's come into Te Awamutu, not necessarily in those different structure areas. So that's an example. The next one for the rank is Newington Domain, will be the next one.
I'm with you now. I was a bit confused because it was a level of service rather than a renewal, and I see what you're meaning now. Cool. Excellent. Just wanted to make the comment that the Resource Recovery Centre funding, I'm a little bit disappointed that that it's perhaps, I mean, is that going to deliver us a resource recovery centre is what I'm wanting to ask, because I'm thinking the answer will be no. I had understood that we had given a pretty clear question that a clear message that we wanted this to have some priority. And it kind of plays to a whole anchor institution notion and some of the challenges around waste minimisation that we're addressing, well, we need to address. And I just want to have an understanding on where this money is going to get us. And if it's not enough to get us where I think we all want to be, perhaps we should be elevating its priority in our spending.
Thank you, Your Worship. Certainly the intention is to fully fund the development of the Resource Recovery Centre. A project's underway. It's partially funded through the Better Off funding that was referenced earlier. It is looking at a joint project with a number of other options in terms of co-development within the property in Cambridge. But yeah, absolutely delivering a Resource Recovery Centre for our community is the plan.
Fantastic. That makes me very happy. I don't know if there were any other over there. Just look, it's got to be said. I guess it's pretty clear that there's a lot of intention here for capital expenditure in Cambridge in the next sort of up to 4 years. And I guess just mindful, flagging here that if you combine the library, a new library or whatever it looks like, together with the town hall upgrade, that's, if it's going to be inflated more, that's according to my calculations, 38.5 or so million. And I'm really mindful of what Gary's often said, that usually you can deliver really cool capital spend at a rate of how many years?
So when we looked at our books with Deloitte's some 15 years ago, an organisation of our size could deliver 2 significant community projects once in each LTP period. So we were thinking in those days of your Cambridge Pool, Karapiro Domain, Te Awamutu Library, those sorts of things. So generally speaking, we've delivered 2 of those really significant community type projects that are somewhat discretionary in nature, but certainly add to the value of the live, work and play in Waipa.
Okay, thanks for that, Gary. So bearing that in mind, we've kind of got 3 really here, haven't we? And I guess I'm just anxious that in the climate that we're in financially, and in the need for us to be prudent, I just want us to bear in mind that that is where those dollars are falling currently. And I guess I have to say I'm a little bit, I would favour pushing the library out further, appreciating that there's a clear signal that it's wanted, but these things do take time. And I guess the promotion of it up the ranking in the order has come as a result of an accommodation strategy. So I feel like it's sort of been promoted for potentially the wrong reasons and placing us in a position where there are, you know, a number of fairly large, expensive capital expenditure projects in that cluster of years that will be very weighty. So I just had to put that out there. Everybody loves a library, I get that. But are we being prudent in our approach? That's what the question I want to ask.
Perhaps we need to add the wastewater treatment plant onto that list as well.
Claire?
Yes, so I'm really pleased that you raised it, Mayor Susan, because I guess, I was wanting to talk about it with the consultation topics, because yeah, it is obvious that I suppose there's sort of a in those early years, yeah, we've got the incidents of those really big CapEx dollars, and a lot of them are over in Cambridge, and not wanting to deny the community, the chance to, have those developments, that investment that they clearly think is really critical for them. But is this an opportunity to say, look, all these projects are really important, but why don't we ask the community to vote on which ones should have priority, which ones should be first, second and third? And so perhaps which years they might fall in. Because I'm also thinking about, well, what about the other side of the district? Because they're going to want a project like what Gary said, we can do two, it makes sense that hopefully one would be in Cambridge and one would be over this side, but we don't really, I don't know if we're counting Te Arawai as that, but I would be open to designing the consultation for the LTP, for the Cambridge community at least, or perhaps district-wide, but these are the things that are on the cards for meeting the needs of our communities. Yeah, if we could only do one in Cambridge, what would it be? Something like that.
Yeah, thanks for your comments, Claire. Mike?
Got to have a counter to that through the mayor. Yeah, what is it? I saw some billboard about an old guy waiting for house prices to come down as a young guy, and it was a photo of him with a walking stick and a beard. So I liken that to a couple of projects that we've done that I've back in the community board days when this pool was first mooted. 11.6 million firmly sticks in my head what that pool was going to cost, and it morphed into a totally different project, admittedly. But it ended up at least, let's call it 23 million. I might be up by $1 million or $2 million, but by waiting and procrastinating and changing and chopping, and it ended up costing ratepayers probably in the end a heck of a lot more. For a better product, we kept the 50-metre pool. The other one is Te Arawai. This has been on the cards now for at least a number of years, and for whatever reason, and an oversight shifted, etc., but it has morphed from, I don't know, maybe, what was it, 17, 20 million or something, and now we're up into the sort of early 30s. So I guess my point is, if something is going to go ahead, why wait for it to go up and impact ratepayers even more down the track? And I guess that's the flip side to the argument, that I totally understand what you're saying, Claire, but if it's going to happen anyway, and if we can do it, and your ratepayers are going to be impacted, but less than if we start this in 3 or 4 years. And that's the dilemma that we sit here with today.
Yeah, also bearing in mind that any significant infrastructure bill doubles in cost in 7 years. Totally aware of that. But I guess it has to be said that that's a lot of money, and B, a lot of it going to Cambridge in a few years. And I just want to make sure that we all understand that. And if we're supportive in that, that's cool. But I think we just have to understand that is what this is proposing. Claire, then Monty.
Yeah, I can totally see that flip side too. And I think we've got to have some really good discussions about it, not just ending it today, because I guess what I'm uneasy about is that I know that there's a high likelihood of another project coming through from Pirongia, for instance, that hasn't, hit this process yet. And yeah, so it's going to look great. Oh, sorry, we don't have any room for that because we're absolutely maxed out in Cambridge. That's all. I think I appreciate, I can see your point of view. It's just that, we've got to find balance in the district.
And it's got to be prudent. Monty.
Yeah, just responding to Claire's comments about how the consultation should run. I probably don't support your sort of voting type option, Claire, because all this work has gone in and ultimately comes out, there's a rates number and this is what we've budgeted to achieve. So I'm right in favour of having, you know, a really fulsome consultation, but we've already arrived at that number on that capital and OPEX expenditure program. So I wouldn't like to sort of publicly rework that. If people, you know, want to express views on those projects, sure, that's great. And, you know, then we can have a discussion about what that looks like. But I'm not right into democratizing that because it wrecks the work that's done. Now, and just look, I'm actually with Mike. Look, a 15% rates rise, 14.8, it's actually acceptable to me. I'll stick my head out on the block, okay? And these kind of projects that we're funding are what makes Waipa such a great place to be. And look, I'm comfortable with all of them because of that. And I know 15% as a headline number sounds like a lot, but when you look at, you know, the actual annual cost to ratepayers, my judgment is it's acceptable. It's worth it, and it makes this place a great place to live. So I'm actually really comfortable, and yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm happy to be a little bit bold on that, and if people shoot me down if they want to.
Thanks, Monty. Andrew.
Thanks. I've sat here to listen to a lot, and some of it's been pretty sensible, and I thank people for their contributions to the debate. I kind of agree with you, Monty. I also agree with Claire. I mean, we do need balance in the district. We don't want to end up in 20 or 30 years with a district that's so lopsided that it's, you know, not sensible, I suppose. However, Ken, back in one of the workshops we did, you know, in arriving at this, you did an exercise where it showed for each of these major community projects, that if they didn't go ahead, the difference it made to the rates. Would it be possible to reproduce something like that for the consultation document?
Oh, look, so yeah, through your worship, I mean, it's essential really for the consultation document. So yeah, so we'll come on to that soon. And of course, what you'll see on the screen is just bare bones. But look, for any consultation topic, you need to well illustrate what the rating impacts are, etc. So you know, so take it that there'll be pretty comprehensive figures for each of the consultation topics in terms of what the rates impact of the alternative options are, so that yeah, so the ratepayers can be quite informed in their submissions. Yeah.
Yeah, great. So
Cool, excellent. Well, I think is that a pretty good segue into Melissa's work, or are you still going there, Ken?
Yeah, no, look, just want to close it out. Yeah. So yeah, so look, just two very quick comments from me just before we move on to Melissa. So first of all, yeah, this is a workshop today. So it's a workshop today, so no decision making. But look, I guess some staff are taking from this you know, general support to progress this through to the next steps. And then the other thing I do just need to acknowledge is yeah, there is some of the stuff that we've talked to today, and some of the numbers are pretty hot off the press. So yeah, so there is still a bit of work to be done, particularly a bit of QA work. So we will be doing that obviously between now and the 18th of January, or the papers that come due for the 18th of January. The staff will still keep working on that. I guess there is yeah, so therefore there is you know, the chance of some change. Yeah, I don't imagine it will be major. In fact, seriously hope it won't be major, but yeah, a little bit of ongoing work between now and the 18th. So just wanted to make sure you're well aware of that. Melissa, yeah.
Sat patiently waiting. Right, now that we've covered off the numbers, we can talk about the consultation topics that you're all sounding very eager to crack into. So the next few slides, we've got 5 potential consultation topics. These have been identified as they essentially are triggered by council's significance and engagement policy. So that normally is what determines what topics end up in the consultation document. And the thing that triggers those is essentially high cost, high interest projects.
which we'll be looking for feedback from the community on. So we are seeking feedback from you all as to the topics themselves and then the options included within those. So starting with Te Arawai, obviously there has been a little bit of discussion on this already this morning. So this is a project which does have a little bit of history behind it. So it has been previously consulted on with the community, I think through the 2018 long-term plan. And I think at that time it was more around the scope of what the facility was or what it would look like. So on that basis, that's why the options, the three options that we're including here are kind of more based around timing. They are, it is a project that does have complexities around it with respect to external funding and the likes. So noting that the preferred option is the one that we have included in the budget or the draft budget as it currently stands. So that would be proceeding with the project to commence in year 1 with external funding covering the costs for year 1 and half of year 2, noting that the rates impact would take effect from year 3. Option 2 would be to delay the commencement of the project to year 2. And then option 3 would be proceeding with the project in year 1 through loan funding where external funding would not be secured. So happy to have a discussion on that one. Mike, and then Roger.
Yeah, look, really just to add in there, and it might fit into option 1, or is it just sitting at staff level that tenure around this table sounds like a no-brainer? We're not going to, my feeling is we're not spending 33 million on something that we haven't got absolute security of this land forever and a day. But whether that goes in here or whether that sits at a staff level, happy to take some guidance on. And we've already got some stuff in there, Sally, around basically if the external funding isn't met by, you know, I feel comfortable around the safeguards there. So really just the tenure thing, would it go into something like this? Or does it sit underneath this? Is it something the public should have a say on? That's my question.
Sally.
If I can through the mayor, in terms of that, I think there has already been, we do already have a hold point, and part of that hold point is not only around design, but the questions that have already been raised around tenure, etc. So those are council decisions that need to occur in order for the process to proceed, along with external funding. I think has already been raised today around the external funding component, that the reasons why these are as they are, if there isn't an indication with this project within the long-term plan, then external funding will not follow through with that as well. So this is an opportunity to consult, and I think the key thing there in terms of what is identified as option 3, you know, we are working very hard around that external funding. So that is our key priority and is one of the requests that council has put on the table. In terms of the budgets that we talked about previously, what you're not seeing within that CapEx spreadsheet is the revenue lines that support it. And so we are very much counting within this project on that external funding. And the more we get through, we hope that there will be refinement of costs as well.
Thanks for that answer, Sally. Thank you.
Roger.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Your Worship. Mine is a general question related to all of the projects there and all of the options that are offered. When we look perhaps at our previous decisions that we've made in terms of options presented to us, I seem to recall that in all cases there has been an option not to proceed. Should this not be included as an option in each one of these consultation documents or consultation questions?
Mike?
It's like getting 400 kids together and offering them 3 videos. You're going to please not many people. And I hear what you're saying, but personally, I think it would be quite divisive. I think I'll pick up on Monty's point. The staff and us have done a lot of work over a lot of time in putting these as the forefront of importance for our district and some good rationale why. So personally, I'm really comfortable with what sits here. I just think we'd be opening up a massive can of worms.
Thanks, Mike. We have consulted on this before, so there's nothing particularly new there. Other than the money, the price. We appreciate that, which is why it's triggered into this document, and that becomes a question of timing.
But do we have an opportunity, do we move them around with the years, beyond year 3? So year 4 sort of thing, year 5? Do we have that opportunity to move some of these projects if we need to? It's not saying squash them altogether.
We could do that to the Cambridge Library and the Town Hall Trust if you want.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not just one particular project.
No, that was my point when I highlighted that there was a lot of capital expenditure in those few years. If we're comfortable with that, then that's fine. We're going into it understanding that that's position. But I just thought it was appropriate to flag that. And if there's an appetite to start sliding things backwards and forwards, to your point around things costing a lot later and more as time goes by, we could be encountering a bigger challenge than what we perhaps thought in the first instance. And then the next question is what? So my sense is that staff have worked incredibly hard to find the most appropriate ways for these great projects to come to fruition at some point in the near future with as minimal rates impact as is possible. Granted, Te Arawai will require a lot of external funding. We're on that, we get that. And equally so, the Cambridge Town Hall is going to require external funding. We get that, and they're on that. But I guess there has to be a point at which you just back that the plans that have been thought about and considered for in excess of all the time I've been here say that this is a project that needs to come to fruition.
And I don't think anyone's denying that the staff haven't put time into it. So, yeah.
Claire.
Yeah, thanks. And I'm really mindful of those comments you've just made. Yeah, because I do agree that every project that's on the list is completely worthy and has been well worked and supported, heaps of evidence and justified and all that. It's just that I'm not comfortable that there's such a propensity to have Cambridge featuring there. Yeah. And so my suggestion was to try and get the community themselves to prioritise which one they like. But it still doesn't remove the fact that I suppose for the 5 items, 3 are in Cambridge, none in the western side of the district. The pay as you throw is a district-wide thing, so I'm just feeling it's doesn't have that balance. Yeah, it's a little bit skewed. So I don't know what we can do about that. Yeah, there's another way to handle it so that I'd actually like us to decide on the Cambridge Water Tower without being a consultation item actually, because I do think it's pretty black and white what we want to do with it. And then that might give space to something else.
Gary.
So Claire, the application for resource consent, I think would benefit from us consulting with the community.
Yeah, I have a huge sympathy for your position, absolutely. And that was the point of my highlighting, I guess, that there was it's very Cambridge heavy, I suppose.
Thank you very much. I've said and listed quite a lot. I haven't said very much. I'm quite intrigued with what's going on. I'd just like to talk quickly about Te Arawai. And what we're proposing here is using the money we have available to progress this during year 1. If we leave that with the current rate of inflation, it won't progress anywhere. I think we run a risk of having that money sitting there and not being able to progress Te Arawai. Te Arawai, to me, is not just a Cambridge or a Te Awamutu thing, it's a national importance. And I believe that we have to view this as something that's promoting our whole district. It's, to me, if we leave this in abeyance and allow it to slide, we lose the momentum and the ability to progress it at a later date, simply because, as Councillor Pettit was readily said earlier, we'd like the man standing waiting for the house prices to go down. The price is only going to continue to escalate. So I would argue this point that this is one of those projects that should have quite a large amount of priority. The other thing to back this is the fact that our current museum is in a rental property. It's actually in a situation where they're going to have to spend or do something to actually promote themselves down there even more. And Rickett Road is not possibly the best place to be able to be doing this. So I just wanted to speak quite positively for this and hope that we look at option one as the best option in the current climate. Thank you.
Thanks, Lou. Right, Liz and
Yeah, look, I appreciate that. It is, there's some big projects, capital projects that are in the long-term plan, but I guess want to set a challenge, not for the next 3 years, but the 3 after that, that we start looking at some of our urban villages again, because it's probably time that we look to Kiki Domain, Kiki Township. We've looked at the domain we have looked at the domain, but if there is some level of investment that's required there at some stage. We've also talked about Pirongia. A good community facility is desperately lacking there at the moment, but these projects need momentum, and the only way to kind of do that is to start the ball rolling sooner, and then they can hopefully be in the next review of the long-term plan. Karapiro village, that's coming through strongly through Ahuaki. It's a very disjointed village, with a great big main road, but we know it's likely that will change. So again, I'm just saying, in the future, some of our urban villages are going to continue to grow, and they need financial support as well. So I'd just like to turn our mind to that, in a few years' time. But the thinking needs to be done now, the councillors that are in that space.
Yeah, great. Great words there, Liz. Absolutely. That planning needs to start, now, really. I'm just mindful of the time, and sorry, we're all might start getting hangry soon. But is there anything super pressing that somebody's going to die in a ditch over not saying? Roger.
Not particularly. I don't think I'll die in the ditch. That's good news there. I'm just thinking of that option 3, where there is perhaps an indication when it says that it would year through loan funding if external funding is not secured. Can I ask, having that written in there, is that introducing that as an option to the future funding for Te Arawai, even if it's not accepted as the preferred option? I'm just wondering, why are we suggesting that it would proceed if external funding was not achieved? And that's what we're suggesting it in that option. And I just have a concern that that's opening a door for future management of that project. And that concern, because external funding has always been the basis on which we've gone out and had agreement on that.
Sally?
Through the Mayor, fair point. You're right that external funding has always been an option, but this is an option for you to consider whether or not you want that included in the document.
I guess it's an opportunity for our community to give us a measure of how important it is for them. Claire.
Yeah, so when we use the term external funding, does that include the asset sales? Because I understood that asset sales were also an important way to fund Te Arawai.
If I can, through the Mayor, external funding, and my terminology for this is around the likes of external funders to our organisation, if that makes it clear.
I think I need to try and progress this on, or we'll be here still at Christmas, quite literally.
I think there seems to be a general comfort with those propositions there. Hopefully the next few will be quick. So pay as you throw. This topic has been workshopped previously. So through the waste minimisation plan, there was, I guess, this thing around exploring options for a curbside recycling collection. So because of this, and noting that this would be a change to the current level of service that we provide to our community, if we were going to introduce this service to our community, we do have to consult on it through the long-term plan. And then we'd be seeking ultimately what the preference is from our community is to option 2 or option 3. Comments, people? Happy? Yep. Look at that.
It's a great service. It works well.
Next one then, Cambridge Library. So there has already been a little bit of discussion around this morning. So this is a case of the options are around scope for the facility. So noting that option 1 includes the library, the community centre, which would provide opportunities or space for other community organisations and rooms for community groups to book, in addition to a heritage offering or museum type facility within the whole facility. Option 2, I guess from then it kind of becomes a scaling down of what the facility would look like. So option 2, including the library and the heritage offering, and then option 3 just being the library. Noting that all 3 options would be at a new location. The other thing that I just wanted to point out with this project, it cannot be pushed beyond year 4 or the commencement beyond year 4 without having an impact on the accommodation strategy, as you've pointed out earlier.
Thank you. I guess I'm a bit simple, but if I'm given all those options, I'd always go the top one. You know, but I don't have any understanding as a ratepayer as to what that cost will be. So is there going to be a reality check there around, hey, you might like this, but it's going to cost you this? And it is, and it will be. Okay, cool. Just checking. Roger.
Yes, I think you're very right in raising that question, that the overall cost of whether it's A, B, or C is very relevant. But I think I'm just worried about this one because we're currently investing with Power Architects into a feasibility for the new library. And we've already had a presentation from Power to say that a new location is not the only option, that actually utilizing the existing footprint with some enhancement of that could be an option, which again is a different costed option. I just think with going out at this point with those limited 3 options is preempting the results of that feasibility, because it may come back with a totally different recommendation.
Brad's all over this one.
Yes, Kia ora, thank you, through the Mayor. So yes, you are correct in that there were originally in the scope for Power 6 options, which included status quo and then the library taking over various forms of the existing building. As we've progressed that project at pace, what's coming out of that, and there's a draft report coming out next week, is that those other options are unsuitable. They're not going to meet the requirements of a new library from both function perspective, but then also costing is around there as well. So through the work that we've done with Power, we've updated these options. Based on that, we can see that we are going to need a new location for those offerings.
But then there will be a costed figure going with all of those 3 options. It would have been helpful if we'd had that information before we were considering this. Thank you.
agree. Any other questions? Is there general comfort with that? Yep, looks like it.
So moving on to the Cambridge Town Hall, again, extensive discussion already on this. So this is really a case of timing in terms of when the work could commence on this facility. Yeah, so the first option being around commencing in year 3, and then option 2 around pushing the funding out to year 5.
Yeah, I think just option 2 just worries me a little bit because there's so much context that goes with this, especially around the fact we've got a voluntary trust board who are, you know, visible in the Cambridge community, but no one really is going to know. Behind. I just feel really uncomfortable with option 2. I'd rather not have it there, actually. That's just my thoughts. Perhaps there's another better way of doing it. I don't know.
Can I just jump in through the chair? With all of these options and topics that we're proposing, we do have to tell a comprehensive story for all of them, identifying the pros and cons of each and the rating impact as well. So we wouldn't just have option 2 as it currently stands. As you've pointed out, that context is really important, not just to this one, but a lot of these options that we're presenting today.
Yeah, but who really, you know, I mean, you're right, there'll be some information, but if you're under pressure and you're looking at just those 2 options, I'm not sure we're providing the right direction here of that.
So, so through your worship, so there was some suggestion earlier on in this workshop, and of course you can't make a decision. There was some suggestion about a higher level of capital funding. I mean, maybe that could be the option. Yeah, you know, we've got 6.3 in for option number 1 in year 3. Yeah, you know, maybe option 2 could be a higher level. And of course we need to explain the rating impact of that, etc. But would that be better? Because like I say, very clear messaging from that Town Hall Trust is it kind of needs to be in year 3. So you know, the Town Hall Trust, as I said earlier on in this meeting, would certainly not be comfortable at all with that option 2.
Okay.
Yeah, that probably is better through you, Susan. In some ways, because look, if enough people want to say don't go ahead with the project, they'll say that. It doesn't have to be an option. They'll just say it, and then that comes back to us to make the final decision. And it's not really a numbers game. I mean, it is to a certain extent. You don't want to create expectations you can't meet, but at the end of the day, to me, submissions is about ideas. People come up with ideas that we haven't thought of that have got merit, fantastic. But you can have a whole raft of people voting or saying something that, you know, we have all, like Mike said before, we've had all the information presented to us. We have considered it and will consider it in the future. We make the decision, basically, not the people we consult with. They might not like that thought, but it's the truth.
Yeah, thanks, Cedric. Claire.
Yeah, so I feel that limiting the options to either spending X amount of dollars or X plus $6 million isn't, I suppose, a broad enough range of things to choose from. I accept, the concern that saying that an option is to move the funding out quite a bit later. I do feel that that can be covered by that, you know, extra narrative. I mean, I was going to suggest something like just move the project funding to a later year. So not saying exactly how far out, might soften it a little bit, but then not give the direction you really need. But I wouldn't be that comfortable with just having 2 options. It's either X amount or X plus, you know, like, yeah, not for me.
Okay. Mike.
Through the mayor, just an idea which I think is a bad one actually, but I'll throw that there anyway.
Don't share it then.
Well, it's just got repercussions if it was a good idea. Is there having a second or third option of around, this is rates funded across the district, correct, through loan? The 6.3 million, if it happens, is that correct?
Oh, actually, in terms of the funding mix, there is a bit of district wide, or certainly urban district wide in terms of some of the facilities spend. Yes, yeah, certainly operational costs are all picked up by Cambridge, but yeah.
Well, I hate to leave our farmer mates out, but anyway, so maybe an option that just thrown on the table, 6.3 million. But if Cambridge are hell bent on spending more money on this, that could be a targeted rate for the Cambridge and Mangatauturi ward. And then and you put it out there as a consultation option. Just thrown on the table.
Andrew.
Yeah, just on that, you know, when these consultations go out, the documents, where the funding comes from will be clear in that one, yes.
Delmarie.
Tēnā korua, you're doing well. I just want to know, this is detailed stuff, Melissa. When these go out as topics and the narrative goes with them, I'm just thinking about a visual thing here. Do we put with this narrative like a color coding to each of the, I want to say, like, is there like a tourism tab? Is there something in there where it's really quite relative to how much the Cambridge Town Hall will give back across a few sectors, kind of thing? I'm sorry, I can't even think of but when we would be putting out, it's like putting out a little matrix of color codes that would feed to say where our funding of doing this will lead back to what it will come into the community. I don't quite know how to say this well today, but it's just showing our community where those strands that will feed into how we're investing. So it's sort of, yeah, I'm just wondering whether we do that with our.
Yeah, that is definitely something that we could look into. Obviously, we'd need to have substantive numbers around that. But yeah, it's absolutely something that we could look into.
Suppose just narrowing it down to those well-being, all of that kind of stuff, and how it would sit to show. Yep, there's the business stuff, but there's also the well-being and all of that sort of stuff that it would relate to, bringing all of that to the community.
So we're being true. Yep. Lisa or Kirsty or both? Lisa.
Through you, Your Worship, you said something that we do try to tag all of our projects back to, and that's the community wellbeings and the values and the strategy direction that we have for the organisation.
Through the mayor, just an answer to my question though. I mean, I threw it on there. It wasn't tongue in cheek. It was an option of Cambridge residents are that keen, then given the option of this is what it would cost you.
It's not a bad idea. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. So I think we've done the Cambridge Town Hall to death now. We can move on because I'm about to eat my arm, getting hangry, and we're getting grumpy because our food's out there. So Cambridge Water Tower, again, a little bit of discussion on this one already this morning. So option one is what's currently included in the budget. So seeking consent, and then for the demolition works of the tower. And then with option two being to repair. Pretty sure.
Are we going to put a price in there though? Because the first question will be, well, how much does it cost?
Yeah, again,
cool.
Will be costed, yeah. Excellent. So moving on, the consultation document itself. So as was attached to the memo, was a mock-up of consultation document, and what you're seeing up on the slide there is essentially the cover page. It's not about the words, it is just a mock-up to provide the look and feel for what we're looking at. So the background is essentially that the consultation document provides us an opportunity to share our stories with the community. We do go into details around highlighting key issues and both opportunities through the things that we'll be seeking feedback on, and to provide context for those. It is a document that is required by legislation, and that's the basis on which it is audited on. So it does go through quite a rigorous process to get to that point of sharing with our community. So the theme that we're essentially proposing today is one of black and white. The idea behind that is acknowledging that we are in quite a tough economic environment at the moment. And we've had this in mind when we've been pulling together the draft budget, and we have been taking kind of a no frills approach. So the concept is based on the idea of telling it like it is. It's here, it's in black and white, clear for you to read. The long-term plan will be going out for consultation concurrently with consultation on Ahuaki. So it's kind of, there's quite nice synergies between both documents, and that we're acknowledging that the current climate, economic climate, is one of challenge. It's not the best picture, it's in black and white, but the future is bright, and that's where Ahuaki, the long-term outlook for Waipa is great. It's bright, it's colourful, it's all things good. So yeah, that's kind of the story around the two consultation documents, but yeah, there is one here in front of you. Great. Feedback? Yep.
I like the look and feel.
Me too. Yeah.
Just a bit of feedback was that the two images were both of Cambridge. That's all. They're really good. Yeah, I'm getting that message.
It's
across,
only
aren't I?
conceptually, it's only a concept. This point loud, heard loud and clear. Absolutely. Right, last slide. So the next steps, taking into consideration all the feedback that we've heard today, is to present a draft budget formally to SPMP committee on the 18th of January. At that meeting, we'll be seeking your formal approval of the draft budget, the consultation topics and the options. The reason that we're seeking formal confirmation of that is we are working to very, very restricted timeframes from here on in. So the comms team have quite condensed timeframes to prepare the consultation document. So after the 18th of January, the comms team will be busy beavering away, preparing a draft consultation document ready for your approval on the 7th of February. Noting that that is also the same day that audit come in, so we don't have an opportunity to change too much, but we are hoping to get that document out to you as early as possible to seek kind of more informal feedback. Fantastic. All happy? Happy days? Brilliant. That's it. Well, because this has gone on a whole lot longer than what we'd anticipated, we thought we'd break for lunch and then come back and do the Papakainga workshop after that.
Madam Chair.
Or not.
So you have an option, because we're up against it time-wise. We've got Stephen Finlay here at 2 o'clock for a session with committee boards. Yes. So what I'm suggesting is we break for lunch, and we can circulate the information only on Papakainga housing as part of the Friday mail out. And if anyone has any queries on that, just come back to us and we can answer those. That way you'll get a decent time for that.
That sounds wonderful. Cool.
Great.